Well, hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And thanks to the distinguished panelists here. Really appreciate you making the time. This is such an important topic, and we appreciate you making the time to have this discussion. It's my privilege. I'm Deepak Padgaonkar. I'll be moderating this webinar, but it's basically up to the distinguished panelists to kind of start the discussion and just make it conversational so that we can have a nice conversation and hopefully benefit everybody's time because that's such an important topic that I couldn't discuss more. I'll start with my introduction and I'll request the panelists to do the same. I'm Deepak Padgaonkar and I have over 25 years of enterprise IT experience, um, dealt with a lot of cyber uh, resiliency issues, and I'm contributing to the customers in the enterprise. So with that, I'll let you folks, maybe we'll start with George and then go
Okay.
left to right as I see on the screen.
All right. Terrific. Hi, everybody. I'm George Jackson, and I have over 30 years of experience in information systems management, over 20 years background in cybersecurity specifically. I possess a PhD in information assurance with a concentration in cybersecurity as well as an MBA in IT management. I hold certifications such as a CISSP, HCI, SPP, a C-risk, and also a PMP. Lately, for the past few years, I've been working as a senior principal consultant for Clearwater Security. And during that time, my major role has been performing as a chief information security officer for several different firms, from startups all the way to global firms. So, yeah, I'm very excited to be a part of this panel. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, George. I appreciate you joining and I really appreciate you sharing your views here. So with that, Bhavani, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepak. And hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning to everyone present here. Thanks for joining. And myself, Bhavani Damodran, I work with GS Lab Gaps as a technical manager in information security. I have over a decade of experience working in areas of cybersecurity, such as mostly into GRC as a consultant, and then into security services, including areas such as risk assessments, risk management, vendor risk profiling, and majorly into control framework setup, deploying, and designing them. Yeah. So that's about it. Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you so much, Bhavani, and welcome to this discussion. With that, I'll hand over to Kevin to do his introduction.
Sure. Thanks, Deepak. My name is Kevin Niku. I've been in the industry, IT industry, for over 40 years, of which about 25 years of it has been in security in general. I have a bachelor's and master's in computer engineering and an MBA. I have a passion for cybersecurity and helping customers protect themselves from cyber attacks. In my previous companies, we basically had a lot of consulting roles, but now my company, Zenex, we provide SOC as a service with a number of integrated modules as it relates to cybersecurity to provide a comprehensive protection for our customers. So basically, it's an end-to-end solution. So that there's a lot of topics around that, and I'm very pleased to be here. Hopefully, we could have provide additional information for the participants to benefit from this conversation.
Absolutely, could not agree more. Thank you so much, Kevin. And with that, I'll hand it over to Michael. Appreciate you joining as well.
Thank you. So I have over 20 years in information security. I have an MBA in risk management. I have an MBA in information security. I do have a PhD, but it's in psychoneurology, but nevertheless. I have an interesting career. I work full-time as the deputy CISO for a major city responsible for 29 agencies, 3 police departments, the fire department, Department of Health, and we are allowed to have businesses on the side as long as we register with the city. And when I was hired, they agreed that I can, since we're a 24-hour operation, we have a full-time SOC, and we work, the CISI and I both work, we're working 24-hour days, essentially. But I'm allowed to take 1 week a month to do ISO training for certain companies, to do audits for companies. Currently, I'm doing an audit, ISO certification audit for a major company, looking at their cloud, etc. And then I have been doing ISO certification training. I have over 30 certifications, including many of them in different areas of ISO. And I've been very blessed because I've been able to train in Saudi Arabia this year, and I've been training over with Fiji, and I've been working with the organizations in the Caribbean. I'm really seeing the trend of ransomware, and that it is not particular about who it goes after. The attackers are, they're just worldwide. And it's interesting to see, because the first thing that I'm teaching is, what do we do with ransomware? How do we deal with these things? How do we deal with that? And I said, well, first we have to learn, the basics. And these are people that you have to have 5 years of experience to go sit for an ISO certification exam. So they're well experienced, in the area. Many of them have 10. So the conversations are great and exciting for me. So I'm supposed to be teaching, but meanwhile I'm listening and learning, so it's a constant thing. And then on the days that I'm teaching for the 8 hours, I work 8 hours with my night staff. So it's a very nice combination for me, and it certainly keeps me in both realms during the day. So I could be in Saudi Arabia. They finish at 8:30 in the morning, which is 4:30 in the States. So I just start my day. So it's a really nice combination of keeping me in the field.
So true, so true. And teaching involves learning also. It basically, in my days, it has given me the experience to learning it, because when you teach, you have to know yourself what you're learning, and that is an excellent experience. So thank you again, all the distinguished panelists. I really appreciate all of your time. And to make it worthwhile, let's start with the open discussion. And this is to everybody: what are some of the key challenges that in the age of ransomware, how are they facing it, and what are they doing to achieve cyber resiliency in this age? As Michael mentioned rightly, it is coming from anywhere, everywhere, and it is hitting everyone, and every organization is susceptible to this. So,
if I can answer that, I think one of
absolutely.
the issues has been, I also do audits, so I'm getting to see, I do audits for government, I do audits for different clients. So doing those certification audits, I'm seeing that they've jumped right into the technology and forgetting the governance, risk, and compliance areas of it. So no one's actually monitoring what assets do we have. There's no asset management program. Someone's just taking, okay, this is the priority. It's got to be network. I'm in charge of network. That's the priority. No, I'm in charge of this. That's the priority. And I'm not seeing a lot of change management meetings in a lot of organizations that have really done well. So changes are happening, and someone's saying, well, this will fix that problem, and then it opens another problem. So I think that's the start. Obviously, the technologies, and we can go into the technologies in a moment, but I think that people aren't starting with the basics of the governance, risk, and compliance. And whether you're using COSA, whether you're using ISO, no matter, whatever framework you choose one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so imperative, right? And there's a free questionnaire that I have seen for assets in general in NIST CISA, and they do pretty well. They're kind of assessment of a cybersecurity maturity model, and that's
Yes.
pretty impressive. So any other points, team here?
Sure. Like Mission had rightly mentioned, right? So ransomware attacks, you don't know which particular organization is going to get hit next. There's no pattern as such. So one day it's the life sciences, another day it's the banking, another day it's the healthcare. So it's all over. And I think the sophistication of the attackers has increased in the recent past. Yeah. So there is a lot of contributing factors to this, that these days you have ransomware as a service, wherein even immature hackers can even get through any network of an organization. So sophistication in the gangs, ransomware gangs, have led to the increase in the number of attacks and the
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
techniques they use. Yeah.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And what are you seeing as some of the techniques that organizations are deploying or taking measures to kind of overcome these challenges? What are you seeing around?
Well, I wanted to go back to what Michael was saying about the importance of starting with the beginning, starting with the foundation, starting with the framework, and choosing one. And to that point, getting the governance aligned throughout the organization. So quite often, especially in large organizations, and Michael, you were alluding to the fact that you've got silos, right? So there's one team that handles their responsibility and they say, we've got it all covered. And there's another team that they should be interacting with. However, that team is in a silo. So until everybody is dancing to the same sheet of music, you're going to find that you will find gaps and where you have a vulnerability, and then it's like finger pointing. And if we can eliminate the finger pointing, stay focused on what the target is, what the goal is, that securing the organization and maintaining that resiliency that we're here to talk about, then that's, I find that the technology issues, as you said, we can talk about later, but it's those human issues that really are the ones that are the toughest to solve.
I'd like to chime in a little bit because I think this issue really has to be at the C-level and the board level. What we are seeing is that IT gets involved and there's cost constraints, knowledge, limited knowledge, availability of resources. And when there is not a framework to follow, it means that there's going to be many gaps along the way, whether it's security policies and procedures, escalations, incident management, and many more. It is not a well orchestrated approach to the problem. But when C-level gets involved and the board gets involved and they look at it from a business perspective, then it drives that behavior. So I think fundamentally, as a community, as a society, we're not there yet, that the board gets involved and the C-level gets involved and says, we need to have this framework, follow this framework. What do we need to do that? In fact, I find that many C-level suites, they don't even ask the right questions when it comes to cybersecurity resilience. They let a CIO or a CISO do what they need to do. And of course, they do what they know, but the limited budget that they have. But when you elevate that conversation, it helps everyone because it is really a problem for everyone, but not one particular individual who has to fight this battle on his or her own.
Yeah, and I just want to add in, Kevin just brought something up to me that said, the boards aren't even asking to see metrics. So, how do they know if the program's working or not? They're not asking. And, to go back to what Bhavani said, I hope I pronounced it right, Bhavani, which she had said before about the ransomware attacks coming more from it's not just ransomware today. It's the groups they're planning, and you don't even have to know how to. You can be somebody who knows breach. You can be somebody who knows how to sell the data. And what's interesting is I'm looking at a lot of incident response plans that organizations have, and ransomware attack, absolutely deal with that. But understand, while you're having ransomware, it doesn't mean you're not also having a breach. Years ago, ransomware meant they just stopped your systems. It was similar to we ransom the system. It's not denial of service, but we're holding it. You can get it back, etc. Now they're taking the data, they're selling the data, and what's been happening is they'll ransom 20 organizations and pick one at random and put the data out on the web for sale as an example for the other 19 people to say, okay, now you need to pay. And this has been happening more and more. And then they advertise. It's on the black web. You can buy these information. It's out there. And so I think that part of it is also awareness and training, not just for the CIO. We all have to go. We have to continue our own training. We can't say we had training 10 years ago. We all have. We're all studying here. All of us. The 5 of us. And that's important. Just unfortunately in this field, you never graduate. You are a student until I just tell people, please, when I pass, don't put books on me. Please don't, but I just don't want to see another book at that time. But it is I think getting that thing of it's a forever learning for the internal teams, forever learning for the board of directors, the CIO, everyone, and the awareness training. I think those are some of the issues that I'm seeing out there.
Agreed, Michael. Actually, on the security awareness training in the recent past, like say earlier, your team member is the person sitting next to you. Today, it's not the case. It could be a person sitting like a few thousand miles away. You don't even know the person. And we all are becoming digital nomads, like leaving our footprints everywhere. And, it's easy for the hackers to pick up those tracks and follow us back through. And rightly pointed out on the security awareness that it's not to be taken as one instance where for me to be compliant to the organizational policy that I take up a training, right? Getting the awareness to each and every one of them by, running through simulations, checking their awareness level, etc., becomes key in ensuring what is the level of awareness that your organization's employees have.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah, and I would like
all
to
nice points. Yeah, thanks. Go ahead, George. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to add to where the train that we've gotten started with Bhavani, the security awareness and how important it is. I heard a CISO say, and I firmly believe that my job is not to make the organization secure. There's no one person that can do that. My job is to build a culture and a mindset where the organization secures itself. So going back to what you're saying, that's why the awareness training is so important. And it is an ongoing process. And it's got to be inculcated into every employee. Going back to what Kevin says, resiliency, I say, is a game where everybody plays. We all have to work together with this. And so, yeah, I like where this discussion is going. We just keep peeling back the layers of the onion. So, please.
I think we have to separate cybersecurity from resiliency. I mean, the concept of cybersecurity is mostly around protecting systems, network assets, but cyber resiliency has to do with, you go beyond that, including policies, procedures, and a lot more, which really has to be mapped to a particular framework, whether it's NIST or ISO or any other. But at least there should be one framework that an organization should follow end to end in order to have that kind of resiliency that we're talking about. It's not just about buying a whole bunch of cybersecurity tools, plug them in including phishing tools and training, automated training, because that's only a part of that solution, but it's not the totality of that solution. So following the framework that includes the component that's education, to me, it's very important. A key component of creating cyber resiliency, going back to George's comment about the CISO that says, I have to create a culture. But how do you create a culture? Part of it is for everybody to follow a framework and publicizing it and knowing these are the components that we have in place. And that education is not about just, hey, we've got a phishing tool that we've put in place, and we're going to test you every once in a while to see if you could answer this question. But it's more in totality that everybody has to participate in learning it.
Yeah. And I think it's also a matter, I agree with you 100%. And I think it's also a matter of taking the additional step of making it part of the, as you said, the culture of the organization, but the everyday. So we're doing it in our processes. We're doing it in our planning. We're designing a new application. We're considering the security. We're looking at a new product. We're actually vetting our third-party vendors instead of saying, do you feel you're safe? Oh, you do? Oh, okay, we'll bring you into our business. This is what I'm seeing. And it's, how do you know they're safe? Well, they said they were. Okay, I'm glad you trust them. And it's I remember when I was 14 going on my first date, and my dad sitting down with my date, and I said to my mother, she said, he trusts, but he's verifying. He wants him to know the rules. What time you have to, I think I had to be home by 10 o'clock, and it was, and I'm sitting there at 14 saying, oh my gosh, I'm lucky this person asked me out, shush, but in retrospect, we do that with our kids. We don't do that with our vendors. I shouldn't say we, but there are a number of people. So I think it's important is, people spend more time vetting their babysitters than they do vetting their third-party vendors.
That is so true.
So true, so true. And it's the amalgamation of business and IT and everything. It's affecting. In fact, I'm liking that the participants are also kind of coming into questioning us. Hey, what is its long-term impact? It's not just long-term. It's like the organizations, I've seen some of them going to just not being existent. And that's the existential threat that we kind of have to organizational sustaining their operations. And it's devastating. It's when it happens, it's really affecting all organizations of all sizes, and it's really, really real and serious. And one question that comes to my mind, and I'm sure the audience also would like to know, what are you seeing as a best practice, and what are you seeing organizations taking step from that standpoint? Any inputs towards that?
Yeah, I do. Well, first of all, I think that there's becoming more of a discussions between the business continuity, disaster recovery, and the cyber. They're realizing that they're not silos. They're actually, there for the whole resiliency. They have to work together. And I'm seeing, that people are doing more. Again, the technology aspects are also important. We can have all the governance, risk, and compliance we want, but if we're not implementing, so I'm seeing a lot of implemented network segmentation. The people are dividing their networks into small, isolated segments to limit the damage that a ransomware infection can cause. I'm seeing that there's more monitoring of user activity. More SIM tools are being out there, such as attempts, looking for attempts for sensitive data. I'm seeing more vulnerability scans going on from organizations, even small organizations, just so they can take appropriate measures to address any issues that are identified when they're small. And then they're developing, as I said, better security policies. This is off the top of my head, but they're maintaining a list, an inventory of assets is getting better to know what potential vulnerabilities they might have, what controls are in place, and do they work. More risk assessments, more regular security audits are happening. It used to be once a year. I'm seeing that organizations are conducting more regular security audits to identify potential weaknesses in their security posture. I'll just go 2 or 3 more and then off the top of my head and let somebody else pick. There's more implementing of email filtering, much more to block malicious emails, and they're enabling the firewalls with devices to configure them to block all inbound and outbound traffic that's not necessary for business operations. Before, there wasn't as much outbound. And the penetration testing, I'm getting more, and partnering with reputable vendors. Those are just a few that came to the top of my head.
All good points. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Anything else that you're seeing around?
Well, absolutely. The bottom line to responding to ransomware and not having to pay the ransom is you to be able to recover on your own. So one of the key drivers is, as we talk about the technology, that it's becoming more sophisticated, and we've got AI that's coming into the picture that I'd like to talk about later. But the attackers became smart enough to go after your backups,
That's right.
so making sure that you've got an immutable backup somewhere, whether that's in the cloud with a cloud service provider that's providing immutability, whether you've got your backups, even if they're taped, they're in an air gap system, you've got to have that backup that can't be touched. And you've got gates and firewalls and things protecting that last resort so that you can restore your data without paying the ransom. And then you go through the process that is of recovery and restoration and everything that's involved in that, and the lessons learned, which again I hope we'll get to later on.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find is the attention to lessons learned can be improved in most organizations.
Yeah.
So
and just to add to one thing that George said, many organizations are forgetting that they're, as Bhavani said earlier, they're working as teams. So what they're doing is, before they're coming in to do ransomware, they've already had somebody breach and put malware. So the backups, for sometimes 6 months of backups, have malware on them. So it's about going back and how long, actually having not just a recovery time objective, your recovery point objective, but how old does the data have to be so you feel secure? And then if you're going back 6 months, how does the organization catch up to that? So now we're coming back into our old Y2K, type thinking, or the coming into the business continuity. And I agree with exactly what you're saying. And that's become an issue that people are forgetting about, that it's, you may have to go back 6 months.
Oh, and that sparked another thing I meant to mention. When we're talking about the recovery, again, how do you recover safely, right? So making sure that data that you have isn't already infected. So you restore to a sandbox to make sure that that's really secure and safe before you restore to the live environment. So
I was going to say that. Yeah, in fact, it's better to recover and restore to a sandbox and then run a number of malware recovery tools, right? Make sure that restore is completely clean. And that's one of the things we've been talking about with some of the customers. Don't assume that the restore is going to be fine. Why don't you restore in a sandbox first, and then make sure you run a bunch of tools on it, get any malware out of it before you actually put it to practice. It's very difficult for a lot of organizations to go back 6 months, because the amount of data loss is huge. So one way to do this is to actually do exactly that. Go to a sandbox and try to clean it up there before you bring it back.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just going through this advisory released by the Australian Cybersecurity Center yesterday or day before, I believe, related to the Bainline ransomware, which is like quite new now on the market, right? So mostly what they have done is having to have the lateral movement and data exfiltration. So like Michael had rightly mentioned, having your CM capture by having the right use cases there to capture the data exfiltration while it's being done, and also stopping any lateral movement. Having technologies like zero trust today could actually help organizations in, even though there is a breach, we are still able to control it to an extent where we are okay to recover from. So those are some of the things that I could think of. And especially in case of Bainline, what they have done is mostly related to privilege escalations through lateral movements and data exfiltrations, etc., which very well we could have the right setup in the tools done. And like George had rightly mentioned, like not allowing the attacker to touch our backups. So in this particular case of Bainline, what they have been doing is deleting your shadow files, which are getting stored. So protecting your volume shadow files against attackers coming and deleting those would be another key thing to do. You could always rely on tools like CrowdStrike to protect those shadow files that they are not able to delete those.
Yeah.
That
So true, all
you guys were
wonderful points, and basically, yes, I mean, this is to the point that Michael mentioned. It's so important that this could have happened 6 months ago, and it's so crucial that we kind of know the point in time where this has happened, and recovery from that point in time is so crucial to the whole thing. It's any idea what are the tools or technologies that are being used, or any regulatory considerations that people have taken in various organizations?
Well, I think there's a lot of companies that are out there, within there, but the actual things are also in the product. Limiting user privileges has been part of the mitigation processes, and the anti-malware solutions, implementing those, as we said, because it could be, anti-malware software, even for this, more detection, more regular risk assessments, and I think the tools that I'm seeing out there are certainly things such as monitoring, emails. Again, emails is such a small part of it, but nevertheless, the phishing is a good way to get started. And it's certainly companies out there such as from training from a know before part of thing, or Bitdefender for people's phones, or looking at, as we mentioned, CrowdStrike, and looking at Zscaler. There are some really great companies out there that provide a lot of tools. And what I encourage people to do is don't be afraid of talking to the vendors, 2 or 3 or 5. Even if you don't have a budget this year, just be honest and say, hey, we don't have a budget this year. We're planning on getting, I do that all the time. I don't have a budget this year. I work for the government. You don't get, our budget's already in for July until next July. Anybody talks to me, I cannot bring them on, not this coming August, but the following August. But that doesn't mean that I'm not keeping a record, and that they can come back to me and I know who they are. And then I know what tools are out there, what vendor tools are out there. And when I go to conferences, I mentioned somebody yesterday, when I go to, I speak at a lot of conferences, and when I go, I have my little bag, and I said, don't give me any swag. I don't need a t-shirt. I want your literature. And I've had more vendors say, you want our literature? And I said, yes, I want. And they'll say, well, we have to email it to you. Well, I'm not going to give out my email to a million, I expect them, if they don't have, I still have I don't want to give out my information to somebody that I don't know, so I don't want 30,000 emails coming into me. But if they have literature, I'll take it, and I will call them. And I think that it's on the part of the vendors, they have to be a little more willing to speak to people without budgets. And maybe a way of doing that is bring 6 or 7 or 8 clients in together, potential clients, and have, talk to them about, hey, do a quick education. This is ransomware. This is what's out there. This is what we do. 5 minutes. Okay, great. Now, what are your questions? What do we do? How do we educate you? How do we help you? And I think that if we could get the vendors to be proactive in this war, it's a war. Ransomware, it's just a, and if we could get them to be more practicers in helping us fight and protect, I think that might be a good way of doing it, because there's so many vendors out there that are great, and they all offer something different. But certainly to know what's out there, what's changing, what do they offer different, and keeping up on that. And that's just my suggestion. But
I think the challenge is that there are too many vendors. I saw a slide with 3,000 vendors, cybersecurity vendors, and each one of them does something different. I think the organizations must find that trusted partner to be able to leverage their knowledge and know-how, so that they don't have to go look at 3,000 vendors to figure out what to do. And that's a bit of a challenge. We've got a variety of vendors, from EDR, MDR, email phishing, email protection, web protection, the phishing education, and recently, the cloud firewalls, and then you've got the traditional firewall routers, switches that they need to know how to deal with it. So it is a very large task, and most IT departments are not they're bombarded. They're thin in resources. They don't have enough people. They don't have enough budget. So what happens? I think there's a great opportunity here for partnership between the organizations and the trusted partner to reduce that risk by leveraging their knowledge, know-how, and tools. For example, we as a company, we have developed a tool which we call counterattack. It attacks the attacker. It takes the broadcast TCP/IP, which is used by ransomware hackers, and it understands that it's an anomalous TCP/IP traffic, and it takes it down so it doesn't compromise the network. So we have an opportunity to look at what's going on in the network, and then if it's a legitimate traffic, we pass it. If it's not, then we stop it. That way, it doesn't impact the entire environment, and we don't necessarily, with a false positive, bring down a production server, right, or in manufacturing. So there's a lot of uh, new technology that, as providers, we try to get to. We continue to develop these technologies that they didn't exist 6 months ago, and that's uh, my recommendation is find the right partner that has that knowledge. Because if you want to go through every piece of tool set that's out there, it's going to take a lifetime to learn all of it and be able to deploy a fraction of it. Whereas if you find the right partner, they've already packaged it. They know what to do, and you just you take this big lift and you move it over. And most of those tools are already pre-packaged so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting.
I love what Michelle and what you've said, and blending that together. That Kevin, you're absolutely right about everything that you said. And I think that goes back to what Michael was saying, was that get as much information as you can absorb, and then try to filter that down to those trusted advisors, so that you can streamline your process. Another thing that you mentioned, Kevin, that there is a growing philosophy now in security that is attacking back, that is more offensive security minded. And that's so important, because I say that we as defenders are always at a disadvantage because we have to clean up too. The attackers can just rip and tear and move on to the next target while we're left. So we're always behind the 8 ball. So whatever we can do to minimize our attack surface, give us more time to recover, as well, more time to protect, lets us advance the ball as far as security and resiliency, which, as you said, are two different things. The other thing that I wanted to mention, going back to the idea of regulations, and when we talked again about exfiltration, and it's like, well, regulations are in place to make sure that organizations are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing in the first place. And we come up against regulations for the most part when we're allowing something to happen that causes harm to an individual. So their privacy has been compromised. Their business may be compromised due to information that's been leaked out about them. So keeping our focus on the fact that what we're trying to do is protect people, protect privacy, protect the rights of others to be able to thrive in their pursuits, is where we concentrate on. And so I'm saying one of the most difficult things that we find within organizations, when you look at the statistics, that it may take 8 months for an organization to realize that it's been breached to begin with. And then after you've discovered you've been breached and then you clean up, are you sure that you've gotten to everything? Are you sure that
Mhm.
you've eliminated any advanced persistent threats that may be existing in it? And that's a long road. And going back to what we were talking about before, having the vulnerability scanning, the penetration testing, having the monitoring, but still having that mindset towards zero trust, having that mindset of assuming the breach, having that mindset of making sure that clean truly is clean, all feeds back to not putting ourselves into a position where we're sitting down in front of a regulator trying to explain why we've had a breach of 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 records.
I agree with that. The it's interesting you're saying about going back and explaining what happened, and I think part of that is what Kevin had said before. People aren't doing lessons learned. They're not following up on that, and it's what Vani said. They may be reporting on the ransomware, but not on the other things that happened. Not on these were things were up there ahead of time. We saw that they were hitting these 5 ports. We know if somebody's pinging these 5 ports, they're probably trying to get into our database. We go to classes, we learn these things, and then people aren't doing them. It's kind of like, I graduated from 1st grade. I don't need to know to do math anymore. I could add A and B. I don't need to do my ABCs again. I never, and it's, but just like if you're leaving 1st grade after you've learned your ABCs, you're supposed to build on it. And yet I'm seeing that in cyber, a lot of organizations are knowing what to do, but there's so much to do. To go back to what Kevin was saying, there's so much to do for organizations. They're short staffed, they're running. And so the basics that, we're not, I don't think we're going to forget our ABCs, but some people may have forgotten how to write in script. I've had more people say, my handwriting used to be good, I just can't write anymore. So we are losing tools that we learned in 1st grade. And I think
pardon the pun, it is literally like, are we smarter than 5th graders, right? There was a show,
yes.
And it's like literally like that, right? We have to go back to basics, and it's like I love the term counterattack, and that's really good. It's like, okay, we have been defensive for a long time. It's time to go on offensive. There is air gap backups. There's honeypots. There's so many techniques that are there that technology and tools have devised the means to kind of go on the counterattack. And so very beautifully said. I mean, it's really, really nice. And it's right now at the point that, hey, they have to get it right once, and we have to get it all the time. I mean, that's what counterattack means. I mean, it's so imperative today. So nice points, and we see all the participants also participating. There's some nice questions coming across, but one of the questions that has always, and I'm sure the audience would appreciate this, is what distinguishes cybersecurity from cyber resilience? I think it's, as you rightly mentioned, it's the graduation, right? It's basically going from the basics to 1st grade to 5th grade or whatever you are, and that's really what it is. But how would you see that, and what do you see as your maturity assessments as you're doing it through the different organizations that you're working with?
I think one of the things in resiliency that is going, that's something along the lines of what George had mentioned earlier, is we have to be able to think about, if something happens, then what do? We can mitigate all we want. I can tell you that I'm never going to burn anything that I cook. Well, if you've been to my home for dinner, that's not true. But that could be my intent. And so the same thing, you can lock your front door all you want, people still get robbed. So things happen. And so I think having an excellent incident response plan that combines with the business continuity, with the disaster recovery, with your customers, that, how do you respond to them? Having a great communications plan so people know what to do, how to, and that should be part of the incident response, and having a great incident response program that's practiced, that is, we're doing one for our city. We're going to be doing it with all of the agencies, with everyone, next Wednesday. And actually, it's going to be 8 hours, just the test of our plan, what works, what doesn't work. And we're not looking to practice it. We're looking to find what's not going to, what do we think that worked? Because very similar to what Kevin said before, people were still working in silos. So we've all been planning in silos. How do we get that together so everybody says, this can't work. Where does it work? And we've been doing the planning together, but it's not been the real actual things. And so I think more planning the resiliency on more take it, not just disaster recovery practices. They do their disaster recovery test all the time, business continuity. Cyber tends not to. They have their plans, they may be doing a tabletop test, but they're not doing a full, or maybe they're doing Red Hat once in a while, bringing them in, working with it. But most organizations don't have a full Red Hat staff that they can afford to keep. They don't even have, purple. I mean, it's just cost prohibitive. And, we have a luxury of having a full-time SOC, and that's a luxury. And I am very grateful for it, and I'm grateful that we have people that are, we beg them, don't ever leave us, everything, but we're aware. And I think part of that is having plans left. So when your key people that know everything leave, you have succession planning in place. And that doesn't mean just your key people could be your lowest level person as far as salary, but somebody that you're depending on to get this done. They're the technician that knows where everything is. And when they're gone, you can have all the managers you want there. You can have all the meetings you want, but who knows what button to press? So I think that's the important thing.
Yeah.
I was going to say, no, please go ahead.
No, that's all right. You please go ahead. Yeah. I just wanted to say that, the key differentiator, like Deepak had asked, to me is, see, when we say cybersecurity, this particular word is like everyone knows this, but when we ask someone what is cyber resilience, but there's not so much of a talk around this particular topic, wherein organizations are protecting their assets through cybersecurity. But there cannot be one organization for sure. They can come out and say, hey, I'm never going to have a threat, an attack, on my organization, right? So what exactly are you going to do when it hits you? That is your resilience. So creating programs to protect your assets, cybersecurity, and making sure once you have the attack hit you, it's okay, get up, and how to move forward and be back to your normal is your resilience. That is my one key differentiator that I could think of. Yep.
So very
Yes,
well,
George.
well and nicely summarized. And I know, George, you started with talking about AI, and any discussion in this kind today and today's day and age would be incomplete if we don't talk AI. So what are you seeing in the sphere of AI? And I'll start with you, George, since you broached that topic early on. And what are you seeing in that space? And I'm sure Kevin's smile indicates that, hey, he's wanting to go at it also. So have at it.
I just wanted to interject one thing about maturity. To me, the marker of maturity, one of the key markers of maturity, no matter what the size of the organization is, how often are you testing your plans? Like Michelle said, like Bhavani said, you've got an incident response plan, you've got a business continuity plan. How often are you testing that plan? And I think about a company I worked with in South Florida, that I asked the question, how often are you testing your business continuity plan? And they said, we're in South Florida. We get to test business continuity every couple of years. And that was something I couldn't argue with as far as hurricanes and disasters. But getting back to the question of artificial intelligence, it's it's a great opportunity in the security space to leverage the tools that machine learning and artificial intelligence is providing. And we're already doing that in so many of the monitoring tools. The company Clearwater that I'm working with has been using machine learning in its software for a number of years now. But I say the reverse side of that is the bad guys have AI too. And so what our challenge as human beings is to keep evolving with the advances in technology and to use the explosion of AI as a signal to us as human beings that instead of fearing AI, instead of feeling threatened by it, how can we evolve beyond those capabilities so that we continue to use AI in a way that protects everything that I'm sorry, that we hold near and dear. I'll turn it over to Kevin now.
Well, I think AI changes everything. Several years ago, I remember very vividly, 20 years ago, we had a conversation about AI and said, oh, it's not going to work. And there were some um, PhD thesis on AI, and I was reading them, and it really didn't take off because it was not commercially available to the point that anybody could use it. With OpenAI, Chat GPT, and some of the others, that changes everything. And with the low cost of entry, it changes everything. With the ability for the hackers to use those tools against, everybody being the attackers, right? That changes everything. So it is, uh, it is a very rapidly changing environment. AI is going to change both um, uh, the attack footprint, and at the same time, we are rushing to get AI in place to provide defense and hopefully more of an offensive position against that. I think that we are underestimating the ability of AI. There's a lot of hype about it in the market. There's a lot of marketing around it, but I see it as a major challenge for cybersecurity because the hackers are already using it, and the speed by which it can generate the attacks is concerning. When you have somebody sitting there and writing code to, scan ports and get in and try to, plant a threat cell and move lateral and then exfiltrate data, that pattern is understood. But when you have AI, that's instantaneously is combining social engineering with organization behavior, with vulnerabilities in the environment, and with the patterns of user behavior, and combining all of that to figure out what's the best way to come in, that has not been addressed yet. So we're going to be facing what I consider to be a big challenge that cybersecurity industry as a whole, we have to address it. I think big things are coming. It opens up a new world, great opportunities as well. I'm not being negative about it, but I think it's a challenge that need to be addressed, both opportunities as well as organization challenges. How do we deal with a new way of attacks?
Yeah, and I think that part of the to go back to something that Kevin just said that made me think, it's not just the attackers using it. It's sometimes our own employees that are causing problems. There have been cases of a high-level executive taking PowerPoint that he had done internally for senior executives the year before, putting it into Chat GPT and saying, hey, convert this in. And now Chat GPT just started where you can say, don't share with the community. Before that, you had to have something like Jasper or the other ones you were actually paying for. But that information was shared to the world with their confidential information. And not to blame ChatGPT, because it said right on it, this information becomes part of the tool. But people are, I know for our organization, we have said that, you cannot use any ChatGPT or anything, ChatGPT specifically, unless you can show you that your department, your organization, your agency has a purchased, so there's more control. And we had to put together a whole policy, which took a while, a very long time. I wrote it, and on exactly what should be allowed, what should not be allowed. Training our people, going back to awareness training on. Do not put code on and saying, did I do this properly? It's out. Do not say, should we have this is what we currently do to protect our organization. Is there a better way of doing it? This is not, ChatGPT is not your friend. It is not the person you go to take there was a movie years ago, I forgot the name of it, but the fellow fell in love with it and event the AI, and he took the computer with her on dates. He took his laptop with her, and he was sitting in the park, and, she became his, romance. And this is not what it is. And I was reading an article recently that people are getting it. They're thinking it as a friend. They're lonely. They're talking, and they know it's not real, but they're getting that connection. And it's getting people, in the organizations. And it's not just the theory. This has happened to organizations where the employees are sharing data, not real, and maybe not. And ChatGPT is one. There's many of them. Now, I mean, some of them will say, like even Jasper, you pay for it, but you have to say, it says in small print on the bottom, can these be shared with Jasper? If you don't click no, it goes into the worldwide information and can come out. So I think that we could be attacking ourselves in a way, so I mean, it's.
Yeah.
So important discussions. I know we are almost running out of time, but there is a question from the audience. Are there any specific tools that you have seen that have worked really well, have not worked really well, that you would like to talk about, and just kind
There's
of
so
address
many
the audience?
tools.
Absolutely.
There's no shortcut, and it depends on the organization. It depends on the culture of the organization. It depends on your architecture, what fits. I'd love to say this is your answer. Forget the other 3,000, but it doesn't work that way. And I work 50% of my time, my free time, as a consultant, and 50% of my time as an auditor with Redmond Worldwide. And we are worldwide. I mean, we're doing work in Saudi Arabia, and and I have consultants who work with me when I'm working. They're working on projects, and I tell them all, do not say this is the product, because we don't have a magic pill. I wish we did. I wish there was. I wish there was one, and we could all just buy the same product and just all pray that it doesn't go out of business, because it'd be the only product we would have. But it's the products are a business.
No silver bullet.
They're constantly improving, and and we do have trusted partners that we stay with, and some of them, unfortunately, we love them. We stay friends with them. We'll go out to dinner with them, but their technology hasn't kept up to speed. So it's about making sure that you can keep people as your, we sure come visit us, bring a cup of coffee, bring some swag. We'd love to see you, but we cannot have you protect our organization. You've passed that level. And it's, it's just like us. If they're not continuing to grow as our organizations mature to a better level, we may need different vendors.
Michael, I would agree there that there's no one tool. Yeah, there's definitely no magic pill around this. But the organization can, to the latter part of the question that they've asked, what are the security measures that they can take as an organization? What they can do is they can constantly work in ensuring the frameworks are set right. Again, going back to the basics, ensuring your frameworks which have been prepared and put into use, how effective are those, how effective are your control sets, how frequently are you testing it, and ensuring that all the core components of a cyber resilient framework is actually working, like identifying, trying to protect it, like having the detection run. What is your response when you are being attacked, and how well do you recover from there? I think those type of measures can be taken by organizations with the use of the tools at that point in time. Yeah, whichever is going to help their organizational needs, probably they could use. But definitely going back to the basics of security measures is key here. Yeah.
So well said. So well said. I know we are running out of time. In fact, we have run out of time, and I think this topic is so important that we can go on and on and on. But really appreciate all of you taking time. It was my honor and privilege to be in the company of such esteemed audience and esteemed panelists, and really appreciate all the inputs. I'm sure everybody will benefit tremendously from this. Have a wonderful rest of the day, rest of the week, and thank you so much for attending.
Thank you for inviting us.
Everyone.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you
all.
so
All right.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.